Good evening, everybody. I would first like to acknowledge that we are all gathered on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Syilx people of the Okanagan Nation. My name is Michael Magnuson, and I'm the Executive Director of the Penticton and Wine Country Chamber of Commerce. And I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. I would also like to give a special thank you to all of the organizations who are making tonight possible, including our sponsors from the Association of Interior Realtors and Cascades Casino. We are also grateful that Peach City Radio is with us this evening, broadcasting tonight's forum. For those who cannot make it, thank you. And Groovy Productions, who is video recording this event, which will be available online later this week. And last but not least, a big thank you to the staff at the Cleveland Theater and the staff, directors, and ambassadors of the Chamber of Commerce for providing this fantastic space to hear from all 4 out of 5 candidates this evening that are running in the federal election, with general voting day scheduled for Saturday, April 28th. The purpose of tonight's forum is to give you, the residents, business operators, and everyone else of the South Okanagan and West Kootenays a chance to hear directly from all of the candidates about their platforms and their positions on key issues affecting both our region and our country. Our goal is to help you make a more informed decision when you head to the polls on Election Day. With 4 of the 5 candidates present, this forum offers a valuable opportunity to compare their visions for Canada and how they plan to address the challenges we face as a community and as a nation. While there may be moments when you disagree with a candidate or their party's stance, we kindly ask that everyone remain respectful throughout the evening. For tonight's forum, candidates will be given 2.5 minutes to answer each question and 3 minutes for their closing remarks. From the stage, candidates will see a yellow light when 15 seconds remain to answer their question and a red light when 5 seconds remain. When the 2.5 minute mark arrives, the microphone will automatically be muted and the candidate will hand it off to the next speaker. Tonight's speaking order was randomized with the aim of ensuring that each candidate has a fair opportunity to answer a question first, last, and at various points in between. In addition to opening and closing remarks, candidates will be asked up to 9 questions depending on time. We'd like to thank everyone who took the time to submit a question. While it wasn't possible to include them all within our 2-hour format, we carefully reviewed the submission, identified key themes, and incorporated those into the questions you'll hear tonight. I would now like to introduce to you the 4 of the 5 candidates who are running to represent the Similkameen, South Okanagan, West Kootenay riding in Ottawa. To my left, first is Philip Mansfield of the Green Party of Canada. To his left is Gloria Morgan of the Liberal Party of Canada. To her left is Linda Sankey of the New Democratic Party of Canada. And to her left is Barry Dewar of the People's Party of Canada. Helena Konanz of the Conservative Party of Canada is unable to attend the forum due to a personal emergency. She says she always appreciates opportunities to connect with voters and is disappointed that she is unable to do so this evening. Opportunities for voters to meet with Helena are expected to resume next week. Thank you all and all of you for being here with us this evening. And with that said, we will get on to our first question. So to begin tonight's forum, please tell us a bit about yourself. Why are you running to become a member of Parliament, and what background, experience, or qualifications do you bring that make you the best candidate to represent this riding in Ottawa? And tonight we'll start with Philip.
Oui, bonjour. Hi, I'm Philip Mansfield, your Green Party candidate. I'd like to begin by thanking the Syilx people and their nation for allowing us to gather here. I've lived on a cherry farm in Penticton for nearly a decade. I've worked as a professor, a research scientist, an engineer, an inventor, and an entrepreneur. My work includes software for more ecological urban planning and artificial intelligence for improved health care. Healthy people and healthy communities rely on a healthy environment. Internationally, we know that billions are already suffering from food and water scarcity, disease epidemics, and homelessness due to climate change. We are seeing this here at home. In this riding, climate disasters have had an outsized effect on local industries, such as agriculture, forestry, and tourism. Extreme temperatures, wildfires, and floods have devastated crops, forests, homes, and parks. This is why I felt called to public service. If elected, I will dedicate myself to mitigating the damage, protecting your livelihood, and building a more resilient future. A sustainable, self-sufficient green economy requires a long-term plan and a balanced budget. Tax reform is needed to counter growing income inequality. Investments in young people and job transition supports through education and housing will allow them to contribute back to the tax stream sooner. Investments in innovation grants and innovative technologies create opportunities to build new local businesses that combat trade tariffs. This includes farming practices, renewable energy, and value-added processing of our raw materials. As your MP, I will work to protect our communities by ensuring our youth have a future to thrive, our workers are not left behind in the technological shifts, and through respect and diversity, we close the widening gap that divides us. On April 28th, vote for me, Philip Mansfield, to represent you and your voice.
Thank you, Philip. And Gloria.
Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here, and I'm humbled to be in front of you. I was born and raised at the north end of this beautiful valley. I went to Indian residential school in Cranbrook. So as a little girl, I had the pleasure of driving through this country and through that windy Highway 33. And I used to get very car sick. Siblings didn't like that. They had to look after me. But in saying that, I made lifelong friends because many Indigenous people from this area went to residential school with me. I've kept those friendships alive. So I've worn many hats in my lifetime. I've picked all kinds of fruit in the orchards here. And how many of you picked pears? You know how heavy they are in those big bags. I carried an RCMP application around with me for 2 years as a single mom. I finally put it in. I was in the RCMP for 11 years. I left the RCMP. I went back to college and university, and I became a lawyer, represented so many people. I was also a Crown prosecutor. I was doing well, and then I got notice that they wanted me to run for chief, and I was chief for 2 terms of my community. Tough job, really tough job. When that ended, I had to look for another job, so I became a federal adjudicator with the residential schools. I went around this beautiful country like a judge, listening to stories of the people who suffered. Nova Scotia, Vancouver Island, Inuvik in January, and all places in between. But I was also chair of the Board of Governors and a board member of Okanagan College, the Board of Governors, and we looked after the Penticton campus as well as the satellite campuses in Oliver and Osoyoos, and I see that my time is really coming close. I was also on the Patient Care Quality Review Board for Interior Health. That was a really quick 15 seconds.
Thank you, Gloria. And over to Linda.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you to my co-candidates here tonight. Running for election is a unique kind of a job application, and putting yourself forward to be considered by all of you is an honor that I won't forget. I want to thank you for coming out tonight and listening and using your critical thinking, deciding how you might vote and how you might like to see our country move forward. My name is Linda Sankey, and I'm seeking nomination to present to you in the South Okanagan, West Kootenay. Over the last 2 decades, I've dedicated my career to advocating for people, workers, marginalized communities, and all of you. From my early days at BC Housing, where I was a shop steward for many, to transitioning to a nonprofit society where I'm offering direct support to individuals in need, my career has been driven by a deep commitment to make a real difference in people's lives. As the executive director of this nonprofit, I've spent the last 22 years advancing services for marginalized and disabled individuals, honed my skills in project management, securing funding for capital projects, including multi-million-dollar renovations, which required grant writing and contract management skills. I've overseen operation of 7 low-income housing properties that are here within the riding, and I've met people that are families with children under 19, seniors 60 and over, and people with disabilities, and helping them find various different kinds of housing opportunities, not just the ones my organization run. Connecting with landlords, talking about what people need for housing, helping people fit their budget into a real life where affordability is a problem. I know firsthand how to access affordable housing can transform lives, and I'm passionate about action for safe and stable places to live for all people. In addition to my work at the nonprofit that I'm at, I've been actively involved in advocating for policy solutions that address.
Oh, that was time. So thank you, Linda. And last but not least, Barry.
Yeah, you can ignore the Helena in front of me. Anyhow, my name is Barry Dewar. I live in Osoyoos. I've basically lived there since 1983. We bought our house, but I was there before that. My wife was born and raised in Oliver, so I think we're almost locals. So why am I running? I'm running because I think our government has lost track of goodness. And I think that's the key issue here, is goodness. Bring it back into the House of Commons. I think also that we need to really concentrate on, sorry, a little nervous. Got to put my glasses back on. I believe in goodness, but I also believe that what we need today is answers to questions that are far more than 1.5 minutes long or 2.5 minutes long. If you want more information, I have cards on the back. They've got my website on it, my email. And I think I'd love to talk to any of you, because there's so many big things. But my background, basically, I was a banker. I was a financial consultant in the South Okanagan. I led 3 land developments, and then I decided to become a hockey owner. Worst mistake I ever made. But anyways, it was fun, but it was not profitable. So that's me. I think I deserve consideration in the election. The PPC have a platform that you can look up online, and I'm running not for me, but for my grandkids. And that's it.
Thank you, Barry. Affordable housing remains one of the most urgent concerns across Canada, including the South Okanagan and West Kootenays. Both affordable home ownership and rental availability have been impacted by rising costs and supply challenges. While the federal government has introduced various housing strategies in recent years, if elected, what specific actions would your party take to make housing more affordable? And to begin this question, we go to Gloria.
Hi again. I know I didn't get to finish my opening, and I apologize for that, but one of my comments would have been, I've listened to your concerns, and we all deserve affordable housing. When I was driving through to Castlegar, I stopped and I tried speaking to some of the people that were in that little general store. And I approached this young man, probably in his 30s. You could see he was a hard worker. He was dressed with the high-vis vest. I tried to tell him who I was, but he looked at me and he told me his party affiliation. And he said, and I'm that because my children and grandchildren will never be able to afford a house of their own. And that really hit home, because if you're aware of issues in this riding and all across Canada, housing is an issue. I can't make you any promises if I'm elected, but I can tell you that the Liberal Party has done some great things in the recent past regarding housing. They want to create the BCH, the Build Canada Homes. And I was talking to another lady yesterday, and she remembers after the war, the houses that people lived in. And we're promising 500,000 new homes. She said, that's doable. They did that after the war, and they can do it. But what that requires is skilled trades. And the Liberal Party is looking at improving conditions programs for apprentices. They've offered to increase the amount that apprentices can apply for to help them, and also to the ones who are giving them the apprentices, the apprentice training. Also, we are taking away the GST on first-time home buyers for up to $1 million or less for their first homes. I think those are really great initiatives. There are other things that the Liberal Party is doing. This is my first time running for federal politics, any kind of politics except chief. And so I don't have all the answers, but I can promise you, I know about affordable housing. I know, especially from my position as chief and resident on an Indian reserve, that housing even there is lacking. So thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. And Linda.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Gloria. This topic is an important one. There are many reasons why housing needs to be addressed. One of the really important ones is that small businesses are struggling to get people to be able to do jobs in our communities because they can't find a place for their workers to live that they can afford. This is something that I've heard again and again, in addition to folks that have very little income. We also have homeowners who want to purchase homes in our riding that are struggling to pay for the big high costs of housing here. Mr. Carney knows about the high cost of homes. As a landlord himself, he purchases large blocks of housing and then increases the rent everywhere. So the cost of living goes up for everyone because other landlords follow suit. Mr. Poilievre's plan is to build for corporate and not for renters. There's so many folks in our communities that are renters. People are not going to be able to afford things if corporate landlords take over our housing. I see people, families with little children, trying to make ends meet, trying to decide, do I pay for groceries or do I pay for rent? Oh, and might need medicine. How am I going to do those things? We have to use every tool at our disposal to help people find homes that they can afford. We have to stop big corporation landlords from buying up the homes that have been affordable and give nonprofits more funding to buy homes to keep housing affordable. My party will support first-time home buyers with a Canada Mortgage and Housing-backed mortgage. We'll launch a massive housing building program to help create jobs in construction, to keep our economy going and make sure people can find the homes that they need. I will stop there. I can go on. As many of you know, I will stop here.
Thank you, Linda. And we'll go over to Barry.
Well, it's sort of interesting when you're driving in today. The first thing you notice on the bypass is all the homeless shelters. And there's, like I say, these questions are way bigger than what 2.5 minutes is going to come in. But the first thing is that the government, current government, has decided to create a Department of Housing. All you old people out there, which is there's a lot of gray hairs, so I'm going to assume we're about the same age, we used to call the Department of Highways in British Columbia the Department of Holidays. Okay, can you imagine what the government building houses would be like? Like, I can't even imagine that happening. But I was a house builder, and there's way too much red tape. There's way too much things that you have to do. And with all the policies that tie into this, that dovetail back to this issue, it's not a simple answer. But I'm just going to tell you a little story about in Osoyoos. There was a developer, not me, I did develop in Osoyoos, but not this particular development. Guy built, I think it was about 20 units. They were called low-income housing. My son and his wife went to look at them. They're $800,000. $800,000 is low-income housing in Osoyoos, British Columbia. And it's not like they're on the lake or that they have a great view. The government gave them subsidies in order to have low-income housing. Give me a break. This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But we can go on. The thing is, with housing, tariffs come into housing. The softwood lumber industry is getting tariffed to death. And if we counter tariff, as some of the other parties are suggesting, then all we're doing is increasing the cost of housing, not reducing it. So where does this money come from? How do we afford this? Like, do you know that just the steel and concrete that go into a house, the foundations, we are already being taxed that by the US, and we counter tariff that. Get our heads out of the sand and let's get things rolling in the right direction. I think with housing, you have many different options, and they're giving me the time's up. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. And to conclude this question is Philip.
Hi. The Green Party would like to tackle the problem of housing prices that are outstripping inflation by two methods. First of all, we'd like to tackle the problem at source. Large corporations are able to buy up housing as investments, and their investors are able to take advantage of real estate investment trust tax breaks. We would prevent corporations from buying single-family homes through regulation, and we would eliminate the unfair tax advantages of the REITs. We would also crack down on money laundering through real estate. And finally, we would make sure that when we do build public housing, that we make it affordable, which means 30% target of your income. The second main effort that we propose is to build a lot of affordable housing. This not only helps young people get started, allowing them to contribute to the economy sooner, but it also helps us value add our resources rather than shipping them abroad as raw lumber, for example. So a lot of the money that goes into this affordable housing actually comes back into the economy, helping all of us.
Thank you very much. The number of people experiencing homelessness continues to be a serious issue in this riding and across the country. While housing delivery is primarily a provincial responsibility, the federal government plays a key role in funding, coordination, and leadership through initiatives like the National Housing Strategy. If elected, what concrete measures would your party take to expand supportive housing and address the root causes of homelessness in our communities? And for this question, we will start with Linda.
Thank you, Michael. Homelessness in our communities is a big issue, and a lot of problems seem to stem from it. People need to be supported with whatever their challenges are that got them to homelessness in the first place. A lot of times that has to do with health reasons, and we need to begin by solving the problem by meeting people where they're at when they're young, by feeding children in school, by offering counseling services for children that experience abuse, for families that need care going through struggles in their life. This is part of the reasons why some folks end up in homelessness to begin with. Our party is very committed to rising the tide to make all the boats float at the same level. This means focusing on people and the things that we all have in common. My party wants to ensure that we have enough housing, adequate housing, housing for people of every kind, including those who have no shelter. I met a person the other day. They've been working really hard to change things in their lives. They've gotten connected to healthcare. They've gotten support services that they need, and now they need a home. And we're ready to supply those homes for people to get this person back into community, to have them become a contributing member of society as they wish to be, and they need those services to be provided. Homelessness is not something that we can solve overnight, and it's not going to solve it. The solutions are going to take time to solve. I was talking to teachers the other day. Teachers are saying that they need more help in schools. There's children and youth in our communities that are experiencing homelessness. These are things that, as Canadians, we have to find unacceptable. I know I do. And this is part of the reason why I'm running. I think it's important that we stand up for these things that we all have in common and find ways to solve them.
Thank you very much, Linda. Now over to Gloria.
Nope. Wrong way.
Wrong way. No, we're on question 2. Oh,
Oh, so
right.
we're
Yes, we
skipping.
skipped 4.
We're skipping 4, so it's going to 2.
Did you?
Helena says no comment.
Oh my gosh, we're taking all the 4s out, so I am next. Homelessness, poverty, lack of housing, addictions. I just explained how so many of my own family live right now. It's a complex problem, not one that any one of us can solve, but together we can look at the issues they're facing. Mental health issues. How do you talk to even one of them that you see on the street that's afflicted with drug addiction? I've been a member of so many boards. One of the ones I'm a member of, and I thank Linda for mentioning, I'm on the school district food security working group. Really proud to be a member of that, because it makes sure that our children in schools and their parents and their families, whether they're with auntie or grandma, whoever, have food, not only in the school, but we send food home so that they're not hungry. Let's develop some programs to help them find homes. I love what some of our communities are doing, building these very tiny homes, these single occupancy little homes. And one thing I did was I have no carpentry in my background, no construction history, but I built a 1-bedroom home, tiny home, for my nephew who was homeless from the age of 12. And in doing that, it helped him face his addictions problems. So we can look to government for affordable housing, for good health care, dental care, and all of that. But I really believe that if we have a government that understands the economics around getting our people off the street, off of addictions, not just saying we're going to take 50,000 of you and make you successes. Because my husband asked me, did they ask any one of those 50,000 So we need to work with a government who understands economics, as our Prime Minister does, to face all of those issues that are facing the homeless and the substance abuse and the crimes that are making our streets unsafe. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria.
Trying to keep me
Over,
out.
yes, over to you, Barry.
Thank you. Like the rest of the panel said, homelessness is not something that we can deal with here. It's not something that the government can do. What we have is really a problem in our soul. And I think what we need to do is recognize what the root causes of these problems are. I have a guy that came in and talked to me, and a lovely man, but he has absolutely no hope. He's got a brain injury. He's probably one of Linda's customers. And he's a great guy, but he looks like he'd kill you. And he scares the hell out of me when he comes in, but at the same time, he's a really nice man. But the thing is we have to solve the root problem. And the root problem is not homelessness, it's the cost of housing. It's having two parents working where all of a sudden kids don't have anywhere to turn to, and then they come on the street. They turn to drugs, they have mental health problems. All these things are tied in. And like I say, we all have a party platform as to what these things go. But none of us have any control over that. There's no one on this stage. I'm not saying you won't have a voice, but that's what you have to look at, is who is going to be your best voice? Who's going to get the answers to the tough questions? And that's what you need to know. And that's why I think that this is the most important election that we've ever gone through. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. And Philip.
If somebody is unhoused, we failed them. The Green Party would like to tackle the root cause of that problem. There are many root causes, but it starts with community supports. For example, we'd like our universal health care to include universal mental health care, and we would like to bring that health care to them in the community. If somebody is struggling, they're not going to seek it out. Similarly, we would like to bring other community services where they're needed. A lot of the problems actually stem from inadequacy of the current healthcare system. We need to, for example, support immigration of skilled medical professionals and formally recognize their qualifications. We need to keep healthcare universal and out of the hands of for-profit corporations. We need to make basic services like farm care and dental care available without a fee. There are also a lot of problems that maintain as problems due to drug use. So I think we need very strong supports for drug rehabilitation. If we can tackle this problem at roots and have affordable housing that includes supports for vulnerable people, protects them, keeps them safe, then we can begin to work towards a much more sustainable community. Thanks.
Thank you, Philip. Concerns around healthcare accessibility remain front of mind for residents, particularly in rural communities where emergency room closures have become all too common. These issues affect the health and well-being of individuals and even the viability of small towns. What is your party's commitment to public healthcare, and what strategies would you implement to increase access to family physicians, emergency services, and healthcare professionals in underserved regions like those within our riding? And for this question, we will start with Barry.
Healthcare, good one to start with. The biggest problem with our healthcare industry is that we're burning our doctors out. And so that is why why we don't have the doctors that we have. They're more retiring than coming on. In South Africa, where my daughter has lived for the last 17 years, they have a program where basically it's one-stop shopping. The doctor doesn't do the paperwork. He doesn't do any of it. And I think they're starting something like that on the island, where the doctors have time to be doctors. They don't have to get called out in the middle of the night to do emergencies. I live in one of the areas that Michael was talking about. Oliver Hospital closes on a regular basis. And it gets to be almost like a game between the ambulance drivers and the hospitals. If somebody gets picked up at 7:45 in the morning and the hospital's not closing till 8, they wait to log in their time so that they can actually take them to Oliver instead of driving them all the way up here to Penticton. I mean, in Penticton, this is a great hospital here. They've got everything that you need. But in the smaller communities, we don't have that. And the doctors that are there are working their tails off. But the credentials that Philip talked about are important. Fast-tracking those guys. And they do come in, but we have so much bureaucratic red tape that it is very difficult for us to make the necessary movements forward in order to improve our healthcare. And don't forget, we're working with the province of British Columbia, and they don't seem to even understand that they're closing. I heard a story, not saying it's true, it was on the internet. So anytime I say it's on the internet, you have to take it with a grain of salt. But on the internet, it said that Grand Forks Hospital was closed for almost a year and nobody knew it. Like, not to the regular people, but for emergency. Like, that can't be true. But maybe it is. It's on the internet. It must be true. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Over to Linda.
Thank you, Michael. I met a person, they're living in the West Kootenays, and they have a life-threatening condition, and they need a specialist. If you've driven along the Kootenay boundary highways there, you're going to know that the highway often has all kinds of problems. There's fog, there's animals, there's weather that gets in the way. If you have to drive 9 hours to get to Vancouver and you've got a life-threatening regular appointment with a specialist, you might have to wait for months to get in to see that specialist, and it's imperative that people get there. Having to decide which way you're going to go to get there, you're going to drive, are you going to try and fly out of the Castlegar airport that's always fogged in? How are you going to get there? Are you going to drive to Kelowna to catch a flight? These are problems that people with healthcare decisions have to make all of the time. Getting a doctor, any doctor, is a challenge right now. There's hundreds of thousands of Canadians without doctors in Canada right now. These are the things that we need to address. We've got folks who want to do the work that live here right now. They may have immigrated to Canada, and yet their skills may not be recognized because we don't have a system to fast-track doctors to do the work of a doctor in Canada. My party would want to fast-track the recertification of credentials for all types of healthcare workers, as an example, to deal with health issues in the short term. We need to get those people working. They're here and they're delivering pizza, or they're helping with yard work or other tasks that they're not actually wanting to do. They want to use their skills, and they're here. We're proud of our public health care system, and we don't want to see it diminished by privatization. We currently have TELUS Health, 811. You can call if you don't have a doctor. It's good for now, but is it really what we want? Do you want to have to talk to your doctor only on the phone? Do you want to have to go to a private lab to get your blood tested? Right now, you can still go to the public hospital to get it done. But right now, Life Labs is having a hard time keeping staff. And why? Because they want to pay them less, and they're taking folks away from our public health care system where we could have better jobs. We need to get the priorities straight there. We need to expand coverage.
Thank you very much, Linda. Over to Gloria.
You know, this is my first foray into federal politics. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know the answers to everything. I'm not going to pretend that when I get to Ottawa, I'm going to promise you anything, because who knows where they're going to put me. But I can tell you that I did serve on the Provincial Health Services Authority, which is quite a high-level board, just below the minister, etc. And we looked at the issue of access. We looked at the issue of hospitals, emergency departments closing. We looked at the issue of not having enough staff to even populate those emergency departments. That is so important. I heard out there, why is that? Right now, we are about 2,000 nurses short just to staff the positions that are necessary. And to get to the patient ratio that we want and deserve in this province and in this country, but mostly this province, we would need about 2,000 more nurses. And we're just not graduating those. What we did was we took some nurses who had to do their practicum and we put them in positions where they could help in the hospitals. But I can tell you that our federal government announced $52 million in funding for 16 projects across Canada, and that was the Foreign Credential Recognition Program, which would allow internationally trained professionals to get jobs in the healthcare network and construction. So, meaning we formed and provided funding so that we can credential people that Linda was talking about, doctors and nurses, so that they can serve in our emergency departments, hospitals, and clinics. And I think that's a great stride forward. We do want universal health care. We don't want privatization of any part of our healthcare system. So let's keep that going. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Last but not least, Philip.
Millions of Canadians don't have a family doctor, and given, sorry. We have an aging population that is sorely in need of assistance. Meanwhile, for-profit corporations are taking over more and more health services. So the Green Party would like to strengthen healthcare by many measures. I've already mentioned a couple with the last question that had to do with mental health. We would like to provide stable long-term funding for provinces and territories. We'd like to train and hire more healthcare workers to improve access and out-of-wait times. We would like to expand home care and community care, bringing the services to you where you're at. We would like to ensure access to reproductive care across Canada. In many ways, we can solve some of these problems with efficiencies as well. We're not necessarily using our human resources well enough. For example, nurse practitioners are starting to take over some of the duties of family doctors. I myself worked on a medical AI, which can help doctors to see many more patients because it provides a colleague for the doctor. There can be many other creative solutions. This isn't just a money drain. If you can have proactive healthcare, where you have initiatives that allow people to take care of themselves before they get sick, then you will avoid those expenses and you will have them as productive members of society who are contributing to the very funds that pay for these services.
Thank you very much, Philip. With changes to the federal carbon tax framework, Canadians are seeking clarity on each party's approach to climate action. What is your party's current policy on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and how will you balance climate commitments with economic growth? And we'll start with Barry.
Carbon tax. Personally, don't believe in it. Okay, so the party's policy, there's a policy on climate change, but climate change is, I'm 70 years of age. I've been hearing since the 1970s that climate is going to kill us. In 10 years' time, the oceans are going to flood us out. Then the oceans are going to dry up. Then the icebergs are going to disappear. I'm not saying that we don't have climate change. We had an ice age at one time. There was no carbon involved in the ice age. And if there was, those dinosaurs must have been pooping like you wouldn't believe. This is a hoax that has been propagated by people in order to make money. And you're taking my time. As I started to say, these questions are way bigger than what we've got 2.5 minutes for. Carbon tax, my party is the only party on this stage that does not believe in carbon tax. The Conservatives said it, but they have a fancy slogan, axe the tax. It's a great slogan, but it's not true because they did not leave the Paris Accord. If you understand what the Paris Accord is about, you will understand that there's something else coming. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. So with the whole thing about carbon tax, it doesn't exist. I mean, the tax exists, I pay it every month, but carbon is not a problem for us. Thank you.
Now we'll send it over to Philip. Not on purpose.
Well, I hate to disagree with my colleagues, but I believe in evidence-based policy, and I believe in the evidence of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which has been publishing reports for many years that show that billions of people today are suffering the effects of climate change. Floods, fires, extreme temperatures are wiping out their livelihoods, leading to food scarcity, water scarcity, and burning down their homes and their livelihoods. So we need to do something about that. So we are rich in resources, sun, water, wind. The Green Party envisions a clean energy future where we transition our current fossil fuel-based economy to be leaders in clean energy and show the world how we can be self-sufficient, how all of our energy can be renewable. This will give rise to new industries that can help make us self-sufficient and independent of things like tariffs. So there's never been a better time to take climate action. For starters, we're going to stop giving public money to oil and gas companies and invest it in clean energy instead. We're going to hold big polluters responsible for the climate damage that they cause. We're going to create strict science-based limits on Canada's total pollution. And we're going to make companies prove that they have real plans to deal with climate risks. What I envision is that the workers that are currently working for oil and gas companies will learn new skills and become those leaders of energy companies. And if the oil and gas companies are following the incentives and penalties that we set,
Thank you, Philip. Next is Linda, actually, for this question. Linda, please go ahead.
Thanks, everyone. I also want to say big polluters need to pay for the damage that they're causing in our world, and they shouldn't be rewarded for what they're doing. Climate problems are going to continue to grow unless we become active and change the ways that we're all living. And I think this is an important thing that folks need to get ideas on and really adapt the way that we're living a day-to-day life. There's lots of things that we can do now. We've got some technologies that are already available. I'd like to see us incentivize people taking on the new technologies that are green and having municipalities match the step code that's going to get us there. I think those things cost money, but will save money in the long run. We have to start adapting, whether it's with heat pumps or solar panels and other kinds of technology that will help us change our economy to a clean carbon future, transitioning from oil and gas to the new climate-friendly economy that we can all have. I attended an emergency management event in Midway on the weekend, and I talked to folks there who were expressing their concerns. They're folks trying to do the fire smart thing, make sure that your homes are prepared for the next fire that comes through, because we know it's coming. It's just when. You should get out there and find those packages. It's important for everyone. But there's also folks out there that are trying to figure out how we're going to survive with our own food growth, because the transportation of food goods up and down our valley is become critically important. We've got food we're growing, but we can't get it to where it needs to be. And they're doing a lovely food hub out there to try and repurpose food so that folks can not have their food go to the waste, to recycling or to the landfill, that is actually going to go back to people that need it. They're harvesting food from grocery stores to make sure those things happen. We want to look at putting more money in people's pockets. We want to make people's homes more efficient, whether it be heat pumps. We're going to launch a plan to retrofit millions of homes and make more affordable and buy zero-emission vehicles, as Canada has the raw equipment and minerals to be able to do that.
Oh, so close. Thank you very much, Linda. And to round out this question, we hand it over to Gloria.
Thank you. Walk gently on Mother Earth. That means so much. And if I could go into the boardrooms of the big polluters, I would tell them what for. Walk gently. I don't have to tell you what our Prime Minister did, the first thing that he signed, right? I don't have to tell you that. I don't have to tell you a lot of things, because you all watch TV or on social media, you read newspapers. But I can tell you that the current government will do a review on the carbon pricing on large polluters. They're not saying they're going to get rid of the tariffs. But in this climate that we're facing, mostly from the threats from the south of us, we have to make sure that not only do we look after small business and the pollutions and so on that go on there and the clean energy that we're encouraging, but we have to make sure our big industries don't suffer too much by the carbon pricing. At the same time, encouraging them to be cleaner. Our current government has the net zero emissions by 2050, the clean energy investment, the incentives for us, for ordinary families, to look at clean energy and incorporating that into our lives. We talk about climate adaptation. We heard about the Fire Smart. Most of our communities are looking at that. But we have to each do what we have to do to make sure that we have clean energy all around us. I recycle. How many of you recycle everything you possibly can? Absolutely. And I'm staying at a friend's house not too far from here. I said, "Do you recycle?" And they said, "Yes." So let's do our part to help each other, to help our municipalities. A person out in Castlegar said, "Our country is rich in resources, and you're looking at incentives for big companies and so on. Don't forget the little companies in our little towns, because absolutely right, because they harvest resources, they employ a lot of people, and those are the people we have to support as well." So climate change, let's try to fix that. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Industries such as agriculture, hospitality, construction, and healthcare are experiencing critical labor shortages. The Canadian Home Builders Association, for example, projects that over 50,000 workers will be needed by 2033 to maintain service levels in construction alone. If elected, How would your party address restrictions on the temporary foreign worker program, support domestic skills training, and respond to the impact of reduced immigration levels on essential sectors? And for this question, we will start with Gloria.
I asked Mike not to ask me the tough questions. This one's a tough one. I can start by reminding you about the 52 million that the current government is putting towards, let me get my paper, sorry. I don't have it at hand, but it was also to help professionals come in that are nurses and doctors, but also to bring in people in construction. You may think that bringing in immigrants to help with construction is going to take away jobs, but no, that's not what the data says. The statistic says we need foreign workers to come in and help in all trades. We don't want to do what's happening in the South, where they're taking so many people and deporting them, and then the jobs are not getting done. I believe that immigration is one way to solve the problem of some of the issues that we're facing. I'm not sure I have a lot more to say about that because I'm not familiar with that area. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. And over to Linda.
Thank you. This is something I think I've touched on already. The temporary foreign worker program that the current government has is actually not helping as many Canadians or Canadian businesses as we'd like to see. We want to see those programs changed to make sure that workers have rights regardless of who they're working for. Canadians deserve that. Our domestic workforce needs to have the supports and education opportunities that exist here now. Currently, speaking with Selkirk College and Okanagan College, we have a number of programs that are not being funded. Sorry, the word is not coming. These are the, I'm going to keep going. We're talking about the qualified jobs that you can get when you go to college and university, the things where you can become an educated person. And the government is currently not funding post-secondary education in great skills. We need critical thinkers coming out of our educational facilities. Currently, the government is funding trades, which I think are very important. We need trade skills, but we also need other folks in our community who have critical thinking skills to be able to do the work, help us plan ahead for the future. Our domestic workforce is already here. We need to look towards the future and also plan for those green jobs we were just talking about. People need to have retraining opportunities and help us get there. In addition to that, communities like ours, we have tourism and agriculture jobs that need to have a new way of doing that work, whether that's through automation or increased mechanical help in pulling those fruits and vegetables off of the trees and plants so we can get them to people that actually need them. We need to come together on these things and not have a divisive nature in our country. Our country is not for sale. We're not going to cozy up to Donald Trump about our jobs and our economy, and we can't have a government that's following along behind what Trump is doing.
Thank you, Linda. Now over to Philip.
Well, in this riding, to answer the specific question about foreign workers, maintaining programs for seasonal foreign workers is key to the survival of orchards and vineyards. But more generally, Canada is a rich multicultural society with contributions from many immigration groups. And continuing a robust immigration program helps us to fill skills shortages. I've already talked about filling the shortages in the medical system. But we also have an aging population, and we are in need of young immigrants to address a labor shortage. Furthermore, we would favor investments in young people and to get started and transition to the new jobs, such as the clean energy jobs that I was talking about earlier. We can support them directly through education, and education made free will pay back manyfold, but also indirectly, for example, through housing programs that allow people to get started without starting in debt. We will also specifically invest in innovation grants and innovative technologies to create opportunities to build new local businesses, which make us more self-sufficient and combat trade tariffs. This includes things like farm-to-table operations and value-added resource processing that keep the work within the community.
Thank you very much, Philip. And last but not least on this question will be Barry.
This is a question within a question. So are we talking immigration, which then gives you back to housing and healthcare and all the other problems that brings in? Are we talking about workers that need to work? Well, I talked to a farmer the other day, and he was telling me that he needs immigrants to come into the country in order to pick his crops. Where are the people from our country that really should be doing the work? We don't provide the immigrants that come in the right tools, the housing, the food, the necessary health care in order to live here, even seasonally. We have tent cities that basically are farming community creates in the communities so that they can have more workers. And they need the workers, but at the same time, it's an immigration problem. It's much, much bigger than, like I say, 2.5 minutes doesn't cover this. What we need to do is have an answer. Ask the right questions. How can we get those farmers the laborers they need? We were talking about nurses before. We fired nurses. We fired nurses because they wouldn't take the COVID jab. And it's proven that it didn't work. And even if they did take it, even if they did take the shot, it should have protected the other people. But we fired them. My daughter-in-law was one of them. She lost work for several months, and then she had to take the jab because she's got a family to feed. It's the wrong thing, but it's her right reason to do it. So when we're asking these questions that are so broad and various, it ties back into immigration, it ties back into housing, it ties back into every single thing that they have asked so far. We talked about housing, we talked about homelessness. Every one of these issues are one and the same. You need to talk to us one-on-one and tell us what your thoughts are. The right politician for all of us is the one that will listen to you, not what I want. It's what you want. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. In 2015, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission issued 94 calls to action to address the legacy of residential schools and advance meaningful reconciliation. Of these, 76 fall under the federal government's direct or shared responsibility. As of today, according to one Indigenous source, only 11 are reported as fully completed. What is your party's plan to fulfill the remaining federal calls to action, and how will you ensure sustained progress toward reconciliation with Indigenous communities? And to start this question, we hand it over to Linda.
Thank you, Michael. This is a very important question, and I think all Canadians should agree. Indigenous Canadians have been let down by successive Liberal and Conservative governments across the board. The United Nations Declaration on Rights of Indigenous People is now a law in Canada. We should be standing up to make sure that this is held up. And even today, many Indigenous people are living without access to drinking water, to safe housing, education, healthcare. They don't have the essential infrastructure that they need. We have to stop all of the hate and divisiveness that we have that's pulling this country apart. The Conservatives have been creating the hate along the way. What I want to say here is that I believe strongly that we have to fulfill all of the calls to action, and my party agrees with me.
Thank you, Linda.
As a strong social justice advocate, I'm really pleased to tell you all this evening that I've received an endorsement from Grand Chief Stuart Phillips for all of the NDP. He says the NDP is making promising progress on reconciliation, and there's so much more to do, he says. We simply cannot risk a Conservative government that'll move our country in the wrong direction. He says, Linda Sankey is a strong advocate for social justice, and her work on housing and affordability is impressive. I take those words very, very close to my heart. To earn these words from the Grand Chief means so much to me, and I would do everything in my power to move these 94 calls to action forward.
Thank you. Over to Gloria.
Thank you. It triggers me to think about reconciliation. And I know that some of you are aware one leader who wants to be prime minister said that Indigenous people have to learn the values of hard work. He also said that that money that was provided to First Nations for compensation for suffering in those residential schools, that the government was not getting their value for their money. The Liberal Party is very aware and has taken steps to deal with those calls to action. I know that water, supplying good, clean water to our communities, it's a huge task because when they formed our reserves, they didn't put us in the best places. The city of Sicamous is a specific claim, and we all know how beautiful Sicamous is. That's where we used to live, right at the edge of the water. They gave us 400 acres of hillside in exchange. That was a long time ago. But water, this government has looked at and provided clean water to many communities. They've provided compensation to individuals who suffered from the bad water. And I was one of them. I ended up with stomach issues and skin issues because of the water. But now we have a good water system. There's also UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration. And our current government has looked at those recommendations, and through education and child welfare and other areas, they're trying to work with us on a nation-to-nation basis. My nation is trying to develop for the entire nation a child welfare program. But we know that if a certain government gets in, that will go down the drain. Taking it with our hopes that we can look after our own children within our nation. And that's...
Thank you, Gloria. Over to Philip.
As you're aware, this riding is home to numerous First Nations and Métis communities whose mistreatment by Canada spans generations. I will respect Indigenous rights and self-determination. I will listen to community leaders, represent their concerns, and act on their recommendations. UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, passed in Canada, and that's a good thing. The National Action Plan to implement it is a good starting point. But I recognize that this is a government-led document. Indigenous nations and peoples in Canada may have different views and ideas, which is why it's very important that I listen to them. I'm aware of some local Silik issues, land use rights, especially for resource development, upholding free, prior, and informed consent, and Canada's Action Plan Measure 32, the return of salmon throughout the entire Columbia River Basin watershed, protecting and reinvigorating culture, especially language. But I'll admit, I have a lot more to learn, and I plan to do that. Now, the Green Party does not require me to toe the party line. It frees me to listen and properly represent the people in this riding.
Thank you, Barry. Sorry, Philip. And over to Barry.
Coming last is sort of hard because there are a lot of good points made, but I did develop land on the Indian Reserve in the Soyuz. I had to work with the Department of Indian and Northern Affairs at that time. I think it's changed its name, but it's still the same bureaucratic nightmare. It made it very difficult for us to do our work, for the Indian band to get, well, they got fair, adequate compensation, but they could have done so much better. We basically had a plan to do 87 units, and we stopped at 12, partly because of the bureaucratic red tape. This is the native problem, or the Indigenous problem, is we should have one land, one nation, one people, one set of rules. And I think when that happens, then we all benefit. And I know Gloria is looking at me, but I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's a good thing. If we treat everyone the same, then all the discrimination and things go out. It's so important for us to work with our Native brothers and sisters. I had many play for me on the hockey teams, and I'm telling you, they're some of the finest people. But you know what? There's a lot of anger in them. I had one kid that is actually a counselor in Oliver right now that played for me. He was 12 years of age. When I came back to Soyuz, I ran into him, and I gave him a hug. And you could feel in his body the anger. And then he softened because he knew that I loved him. Because he's just another guy. But you know what? The thing is we need to heal all this. And all the recommendations that the government's put forward, there's probably more bureaucratic red tape in there that they don't need. They can probably solve it on their own, or with the right help. People asking the right questions, people doing the right things. There are a lot of great Indigenous people in this world. Clarence Louis is probably one of the best chiefs that I've ever known, and I've known him since before he was a chief. He's a great guy, he's smart, he understands what his people need, and he does the right things. And that's what we need to do, is get a voice in Ottawa that will do the right things. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. With ongoing concerns about U.S. tariffs and Canada's economic dependence on American markets, what measures will your party take to protect local industries, diversify international trade partnerships, and reduce internal barriers to trade across provinces? And we'll start with Philip.
I think we have a lot of lessons to learn from nature. One of them is that biodiversity leads to healthier ecosystems. That same message can be applied to economies. Diverse economies are more resilient. We need to diversify our industries. We also need to become more self-sufficient by building more diverse industries. We need to trade locally. The Green Party has been saying this for a long time because we don't want to be transporting goods long distances with their carbon footprint. But there are many other reasons. If we trade locally, we're self-sufficient and less subject to outside influences such as tariffs. In order to move in this direction, we need to adopt new approaches which are feasible today. For example, permaculture farming can replace large-scale industrial agriculture, which is monoculture, and as a result, the farm becomes a more diverse ecosystem that is healthier and more dense in nutrition. The soil becomes healthier and holds water better. The inputs needed to sustain a permaculture farm are far less. You don't need massive amounts of chemical fertilizers, pesticides, water, and greenhouse gases. These local operations can also bring more money to the farmers. For example, farm-to-table operations such as food co-ops and farmers markets ensure that rather than a large grocery chain taking most of the value of the product, that product goes back to the farmer, again, making the community more resilient.
Thank you, Philip. And over to Gloria. Oh, sorry, no, you're right, Barry. All right.
Always trying to bypass me. Okay, so I thought the question was about tariffs. So let's talk about tariffs. Tariffs are just a way to tax everybody to death. You pay it, okay? But everybody has the vested interest in how tariffs work. Our softwood lumber industry are tariffed by the Americans. We counter-tariff them. So the price of housing goes up, which creates a different problem. Like I said, way bigger than what 2.5 minutes is going to allow you to entertain. But I have a friend that has a distillery. He tells me that it's easier for him, even with the tariffs, to sell into the United States than it is to sell to any other province in Canada. And the rules that he has for making his distilled spirits are such that it becomes more expensive to him. Just think when this catches up to the wine industry, which basically is probably the biggest industry here other than tourism, and they're going to be tariffing each other. Price of wine in Canada for a Canadian bottler is already expensive. And then when we bring in the stuff from, Napa Valley, it's going to be even more expensive because we need to have regulations. We don't need tariffs. We need to work with the Americans in order for that not to happen. The other thing on the supply chain issue, which is, I guess, the flip side of this, is that I talked to a guy that actually is the head of a marketing board for eggs and chicken. And I don't know enough about it to say I'm an expert. But he was telling me that we need that. But we can't, if we give that up, we probably reduce tariffs in another way. There has to be a spirit of cooperation for all of us. Because what we need to do is like I say, you ask the right questions, you'll get the right answers. But you ask an egg guy, why should we support your tariffs? Because he's saying, I can't stay in business. Well, why can't you stay in business? If you're producing, you should be able to find a way to make ends meet. Now, if it's only through marketing boards, look at BC Tree Fruits. They went out of business. It was the biggest marketing board in this area. And what did they do? They just rolled up the shop and went home. But you have to remember, supply issues, tariffs are way bigger questions. Take my card, send me an email. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. And now over to Gloria.
Thank you, Mike. Well, this is another area that I'm not a real keener on. But I do want to say, in some ways, I want to thank President Trump because he's brought most of our country together with, yes. You know, there's so much that separates the party policies, but down deep, we're all Canadians. And what he has done is he's created the opportunity for us at all levels to take away barriers amongst our provinces and regions. We can do so much more if we work closely with Alberta. We can do absolutely. We can do so much more when we know that our softwood lumber is in danger. So now we have to start creating opportunities up here for us to start building those 500,000 homes, to start using our own lumber, stop sending it off the coast and down south, and not refine. We can refine it here. We can create trade. I have a friend I just met, sitting over here. She owns, works, or both, at a winery. And they're worried. You know, taking the liquor off the shelves. And then we have barriers amongst our provinces. We can't go across and buy liquor and have it duty-free and all of that because there are provincial taxes attached to that. So we have to create opportunities in all areas, small business, sole proprietorships, big business, to make our country feasible, to make it resilient, to make it sustainable. And that's what Mr. Carney is talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. And to round out this question is Linda.
Thank you, Michael. This question is an important one. We're all faced with change coming down the pipe caused by Mr. Trump and also our current government. I think these things that we're facing have Canadians worried. And we've been hearing it for weeks on the doorstep. And we've got 4 more years of Mr. Trump at the helm down there to deal with. We do have a need for understanding what our government is going to do for us. I think many people have already adopted the buy local, buy Canadian. I think that's really important. In this community, we've always talked about shopping local, supporting your local businesses and not your big box stores. People are getting on board and doing those things now. We have to start also looking about how we can make sure that our businesses stock local products and make sure that we have transportation systems and plans in place to make sure that that's easy between communities and between provinces. I think that's imperative. We have to make that happen. We also have to build our infrastructure to make sure that those goods can get back and forth across the country, to build the infrastructure, the highways, the bridges, and using Canadian-made resources to build those things, to help keep people working in all of our communities, whether you're working in steel and aluminum in Trail Castleguard, Rossland area, or whether you're working in the forest industry in the Princeton, Hedley, Carameus area. People in our region need to have quality jobs and they need security in those jobs. We have to ensure that the products that we're creating here locally can be used locally, and we have to help businesses make those transition from foreign transition of goods to Canadian ones, and also overseas. One of the things that Mr. Trump has given us is the opportunity to work with other countries that maybe we haven't been trading as closely with. And now that he's threatening all of us, because he's an incredibly big bully, as some of our conservative candidate might also be, we have to ensure that countries stick together. We have to stick together. And this is what we're seeing in the news this last day or two. People are looking at each other across the globe saying, how can we present a...
Thank you, Linda. Many municipalities and Indigenous communities and governments struggle to access adequate federal funding for infrastructure and essential services. How would you and your party improve federal collaboration with local governments, and what mechanisms would you support to ensure communities can meet growing demands? And we'll start with Philip.
Yes, well, unfortunately, the federal government does not directly control a number of local issues, but it can often introduce incentives and taxes, penalties, and regulations that will have an effect on municipalities. For example, police services, the federal government can support the RCMP. If there are issues with the vulnerable, the federal government can initiate public housing that includes domestic violence shelters and services to protect the vulnerable. So we do have some levers. And I think what needs to happen is a greater collaboration with municipalities. So what you want is somebody who represents you, who is in direct communication with and properly representing local interests. And that's exactly what I'm hoping to do.
Thank you, Philip. And over to Barry.
Infrastructure. Okay, when we talk infrastructure in this area, we talk about a lot of different things. But what we're talking about, in my mind, the biggest issues that we have to fix is aging sewer systems in every community. There's programs out there, and I live in Osoyoos, and they're so polarized over water and sewer. But there's technologies available to us where you can line an existing sewer pipe and extend its life immeasurably. I met the guy that actually does the work. He did the job in Oliver. But most governments won't even consider it. Revelstoke did it, and they're doing well. Water. Let's talk about water. Penticton has a manganese problem. So does Osoyoos. Is there a connection? Is it flow from somewhere else? Like, how is the manganese now, the water we've been drinking for so long is now polluted, or it's not drinkable, that we have to spend billions of dollars to build a water treatment plant in Osoyoos? Someone told me, again on the internet, so we know it's not true, but what they told me was that the manganese in our water does not affect adults. It affects you doesn't affect you up to puberty. And that we could buy bottled water from reliable sources for our younger children for life and not build one water treatment plant. Now, maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But the thing is that we have to look at the alternatives. We have to look at the questions. And I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but if you think about this, if you critically think about this, as Linda said, we need critical thinkers. What have we been doing all along? Einstein said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That's what we've been doing for 150 years in the politics of this country. We need to change our thought process. We need to start asking questions. Like climate. Okay, why does Pierre Poilievre fly around in a jet? You think he isn't using more fuel in one day than we use in a month? And everybody in this room? Probably 10 times more. But the thing is infrastructure is critical.
And that's time. Thank you, Barry. Over to Linda.
Well, these days our communities have growing demands. A lot of our infrastructure was built more than 50 years ago, and communities are really struggling. I've spoken with several mayors across this riding who say all the same things to me, They need more access to funds on a regular basis so that they can plan for the big projects that they have been saving for. But, you know, when you're replacing a water treatment plant, that's a lot of money, and taxpayers locally end up footing the bill. Communities, whether they're First Nations communities or other kinds of communities or regional districts, need the opportunities to plan ahead and know we have stable funding available for when things are going to need to be replaced or repaired. We need a government that's going to provide consistent funding so communities can plan to do those changes. You know, having to apply for every single little grant, hoping that you're going to get the money this time at the time when you know your equipment is wearing out, is a bit of a juggle. And when things break down and they don't get the grant, then what do we do? This is happening all across our riding and all across our country. Municipalities need that stable infrastructure funding. Projects will get people working into good paying jobs and set communities up to be able to plan for municipal and regional budgets, which saves all of the taxpayers' money in all of the regions across our riding. We need to work on transportation corridors. We've had highways everywhere near this community that have had rock slides. We've had fires and floods that have brought that infrastructure down and keep interrupting our tourism, interrupting our agriculture, interrupting big business. We need to be able to have access to fresh water and not have pollutants get in the way of us being able to be successful, having communities that we're all happy and proud to live in. My government will make sure that these projects are a commitment that we can get big infrastructure projects underway.
Thank you, Linda. And last but not least, Gloria.
Thank you. The Prime Minister said we want a more resilient economy, want to lower the cost of living, and have the strongest economy in G7. He also said that we want to build $500,000 homes a year. And my friend on my left said you need critical thinkers. Well, I can't believe that any government would try to build $500,000 homes without collaboration, without partnerships, without talking to the province, without talking to municipalities. Province looks after roads and bridges. Municipalities looks after whatever is within the municipality. So partners and collaboration are so important. You need to cut the red tape. Penticton, can you cut the red tape? Yes. There are rules about us putting up our election signs. What are all, that's just one little rule in Penticton. Think about all the rules that you had. I had spoke to a fellow. He said, I can put 3 homes on my property, but the septic system, that's what's stopping it or making it really difficult. I think cutting taxes helps because that helps us put more towards having to develop those things. One of my good friends sitting here, she and her husband have a septic engineering company. We need more of that. We need more people who can help us design the appropriate infrastructure in our communities, in our rural areas, to make sure that we have everything that we need to make everyone's lives better, affordable housing, all of that. So we need to form partnerships and collaboration. We need to cut the red tape. We need to reduce taxes so we have more disposable income to work on those areas that need so much work within our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Federal elections are often as much about leadership as they are about policy. Voters are not only choosing a local representative, but also a prime minister. What qualities or accomplishments of your party's leader makes them the best person to lead Canada at this time? And we'll start with Linda.
Thank you, Michael. Having an important job requires that people take the time to listen. Having a leader that has a dedicated plan and actions his listening skills is really important. My leader, Mr. Jagmeet Singh, is a good leader. He listens to people and he has the he has best interests of people at heart. He's looking to support the everyday Canadian, not the people who have multi-million dollars already in their bank. He's looking out for people. He's looking out for all of us. And I think as a leader, we have to have a plan on what we're going to do. Part of that plan includes selecting candidates that represent their local ridings really well. Having someone that lives in the riding, that grew up there, that knows the people in the riding. Those are important things. Having good connections and collaborations in community matter here. People want to know who the leader is that they're going to vote for on the local ballot, on this ballot. It'll be these people, and one person who's not here tonight, who you'll be looking at to consider for your leadership for this riding. Myself as a leader, I've had lots of leadership skills. I've led an organization very successfully and expanded it over the years and used my listening skills to be able to do that by listening, hearing what people need and adapting to that and creating new programs that meet the needs of the folks that we are supporting. I've learned to grow, and I've learned that in that growth, hearing what people have to say matters to me and it matters to you. Showing up matters. My leader also shows up, and he brought in our $10 a day daycare. He brought in the pharmacare, and he brought in the dental care. Our Liberal government would not have done this at all had not my leader used the 25 NDP candidates or NDP MPs to our advantage to force the Liberals to make these things happen. Leadership is really important on these topics.
Thank you, Linda. Now over to Barry.
Okay, loved what Linda had to say, but she's a little false in her narrative. What Jagmeet Singh did was not give you pharmacare and health care, or dental care. What he did was he allowed a thief to keep millions of dollars, probably billions of dollars, and never brought the government down. So why do I think the PPC, basically everybody's following their platform. They're the first ones to talk about controlled immigration. They're first ones to talk about most of the things you've talked about tonight. Do I expect that Maxime Bernier will be the leader of the country on this election? No, I don't expect that. I expect you guys to vote for me because I'm going to be the best voice for you, especially if it's a minority government, because my party doesn't have a party whip. I can vote the way that the people in this riding want, not how somebody's telling them to do in the back rooms of the deals. You can't tell me that the NDP MLA in our area, or MP in our area, really believe that, again, according to the internet, that the Liberal leader stole all this money and nobody is held accountable for it. What about the WE scandal, the Lavalin scandal? What about all these scandals? And if you want to put one blame on one party, it's the lady to my right. It wasn't her, but it was their party. You cannot trust them. I talk about a snake in the grass, and I think that Pierre Poilievre is a bigger snake in the grass than Jagmeet Singh. But this one farmer I was talking to, he says a snake in the grass is a good thing, and it is. But be really careful when he comes up and to bite you, because he does control the rats, he does control the vermin, but he will also bite you. So be careful, and remember, when you vote on the 28th, what you're voting for.
Thank you, Barry. And over to Philip.
The Green Party has a proven track record in collaboration. Elizabeth May and Jonathan Bedno are co-leaders of the party. I don't think any other party has tried that. Elizabeth, who's been in power for a while, has been one of the most active MPs. She has initiated or co-initiated quite a few policies. We were the first party to endorse the Truth and Reconciliation. We supported we initiated equal marriage for gays, calls for guaranteed livable income, cannabis legalization, abolishing tuition, addressing the AI impacts on the workforce, and pharmacare. We had that in our platform early. But we're equally willing to be supporting the platforms that were initiated by others that we agree with. We want to work together in a collaborative fashion for you rather than to work on different teams. So we've co-sponsored other parties' bills such as guaranteed livable income, Canada Pharmacare, and renewable energy strategy. I'm here to work with the other candidates and not to follow a fixed agenda that's adversarial to the others. I'm here to respect the viewpoints of others. Some of the most successful ideas come from brainstorming sessions where rather than advocate for one view versus another, you bring everything to the table and you have a real discussion about it.
Thank you, Philip. And over to Gloria.
Thank you. My dad was chief, but he had a lot of other issues, legacy of residential school. But the elders said he was the last good chief. And that's what I aspire to be. A good person doing good things. I think that's what Mr. Carney is. You know, his first act was to axe the tax for us. I like what he did with the CBC. I'm an avid CBC listener, and my husband has the radio on in his shop all the time, and it's always on CBC. It's the way we can talk to each other. Local content is so good because we learn more about each other, how to get along. I disagree with my friend to the left that if we just learn respect, that discrimination will go away. I'm afraid to walk down the street because I'm a woman of color, because of the MMIW and girls. Thousands of us have gone missing. And the sad part is we're found dead in landfills. But Mr. Carney also is an economist. He was with the Bank of Canada. He's done international work. The values we need, my friend on my right said we need to collaborate. Mr. Carney has talked about that. He's talked about uniting us and taking away the barriers amongst our provinces and regions. He wants to be inclusive. He's looked at the environment and has brought out policies around the environment. And our previous leader has worked with, and my friend here on my left, healthcare, pharmacare. We've worked together. That shows the collaboration. That's what takes a good leader. It's not sitting there over on one side, yelling and screaming outside the door. Come inside, talk with us. Let's work together, all the provinces, all the regions, all levels of government. That's a good leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. As we wrap up, please tell us why you and your party are best suited to represent this riding in Ottawa. What sets you apart from the other candidates, and what final message would you like to leave with voters? And for this, we'll start with Barry.
We're on the final question, correct? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so basically, let's put your thinking caps on. None of the 4.5 people that are on this stage have any influence on policy. All we can do is represent what you want, and we have to do it fairly and honestly. You have to sit back over the last 9 years of the way the government's gone. And like I said to you before, Einstein said, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, that's the definition of insanity. For 150 years, we basically kept two parties in power. Why? Was it the best thing? We had some great years. I mean, I had a great life. But the thing is that now we are faced with all these billionaire scandals, and it's in your hands to make sure that somebody is holding them accountable. Nobody has done that yet. You need to take when you go into that ballot box, you have to think about that guy that talked about silly things. But the main message is, we need to bring goodness into government. And if we don't have that, if we have people on the take, and I mean, there's so many bureaucrats there. You ever hear about Bill 293? Phone me and ask me about it. It's a doozy, but it's just waste, waste, waste. I must admit that the Conservatives voted against it, but nobody else did. Read up on Bill 293. Vote for Barry Dewar on April 28th. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. And now over to Philip.
Thank you, everyone, for your time in attending tonight's forum. Thank you to our sponsors and to the moderator, Michael. A big thank you to my fellow candidates. We may not agree on everything, but I am confident you are here because you care. I've laid out ambitious goals to transition to a healthy, sustainable future. We will mitigate the damage from climate disasters, protect your livelihood, and build more resilient communities. We will help people starting or transitioning their career to become part of a new, more diverse, self-sufficient, and technologically advanced economy with reduced impact on the planet. We will move quickly to this new reality through a combination of incentives, tax reform, and regulations that ensure corporations are responsible. We need to work together and across party lines to achieve these goals. I will listen to you and my colleagues in Parliament with respect, consider diverse ideas and viewpoints, and constructively collaborate to solve today's difficult problems. Greens have a strong record of doing just that. I urge you to vote for the person whose ideas resonate with you, not based on assumptions about party popularity or polls begun before the candidates had even presented their ideas. The only poll that counts is the one on election night. Vote your conscience and respect the democratic outcome. Thank you. Merci. Limnit.
Thank you, Philip. And over to Gloria.
I don't live here. That, for some, is a big issue. But when I think about the Secwepemc, my people, who live in the north end of this valley, and the Syilx, who live at this end of the valley, we don't have those boundaries between us. Sure, we have history. We see this as one valley. I travel down here for powwows. I travel down here to see friends. I have kind of a secondary suite in the Carameus area. If someone from Castlegar was elected, they would have a heck of a time getting over to Princeton to do as much as you would like them to do. On the third day of my candidacy, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I was in my car with my sister. We traveled to Castlegar. I met many people there. I listened to them. That's what I want to do. I want to listen to you. I thought about, why am I here? But I look at everything I've done in my life. This is my next step, and perhaps my last step. I'm 71 years old this year. What is between me and the grave? I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot I can do for the people in this riding. I listened to you about housing. I listened to you about healthcare. I listened to you about strengthening our economy. I will listen to your concerns. I will be available. And that's why when you go into that polling station, into that booth, really think about who you want to represent this country to the world and who you want to represent this riding, because there's a real risk of a split vote. I don't have to tell you that. So pick the best person and the best leader and then make your decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. And Linda.
I also wanted to start by thanking the other parties that are represented here on the stage today and the one that's not. I think it's important to say that when we have a democratic process, the voters get to hear from all of the parties, and we're missing one tonight. I think that's really important to take note of. I'm sorry if she's had an emergency and I wish her really well, but I think this has also happened in previous elections before where parties did not come out and let people hear them in a panel like this where we've all had the opportunity to share the answers on the same questions. We have a lot of important decisions to make about what's going to happen in our country in the next 4 years. We have a lot of things that are weighing on our mind because of what's happening across the border. We have some candidates who have some ideas, and we have to take time to listen to what you have to say. I've been listening as I travel across the riding. I've been to every community so far, back again a couple of times, but I live here. I know the riding well before this election has began. I've met people and I've raised my kids here. I know what's important to me, and I have a feeling from those of you who've shared with me that I have an understanding, at least on the surface, of what's important to you. One of the things that's important to me is upholding First Nations rights, and that's something I'll be committed to doing, making sure that their voices are heard and that we meet those 94 calls to truth and reconciliation. I think that's very important. What I do want to say here is that we have a government or a party that wants to form government. They've been incredibly divisive. They're talking about hate. They're talking in 3-word bullet points. That's not how we think. Those things disturb me greatly because I think we need to know what's beyond the bullet point. What do they actually have in mind for all of us? And I have a lot of concerns around that. The leader of that party sounds an awful lot like someone to the south, and I think some of you know what I'm talking about. I don't need to go into that. But I do know that we need a leader that's going to take us to the point where Canadians have a strong economy, strong jobs, strong health care, and strong relationships with each other so we can work together and collaborate. I think that's so important. We have to find ways we can work together. We all have things in common, but we have some things that are a little different. Today, I want to tell you that in this riding, the vote will split. We need to make sure the Conservatives don't win. Vote.
Thank you, Linda. And another round of applause for all the candidates here tonight. Philip Mansfield of the Green Party, Gloria Morgan of the Liberal Party, Linda Sankey of the New Democratic Party, and Barry Dewar of the People's Party. Thank you for sharing your platforms, your vision, and your thoughts on how you would represent us in Ottawa. Again, tonight would not have been possible without the support from Association of Interior Realtors, Cascades Casino. Thank you to Peach City Radio for broadcasting live, Groovy Productions for recording this event, and the Cleveland Theatre for opening their doors to us, as well as the Chamber's directors, staff, and ambassadors who work throughout the forum. Remember that advanced voting begins Friday, April 18th, and runs every day until Monday, April 21st from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. General voting day will be held on Saturday, April 28th. Sorry, Monday, April 28th. For more information, which goes to myself clearly, visit Elections Canada at elections.ca. Have a great night.